Hello, everyone. This is Chad Seegers with Insight Wealth Strategies and my partner, Brian Stormont in San Ramon as well. Today, we're going to go over some things that you can look at to maximize Chevron retirement benefits should you be left standing. Some things we're going to look at is what happens when we're looking at an earlier than typical or earlier than planned for retirement. Then what do you do typically if you're going through a restructuring event? Some key things that you want to consider for all employees, whether you're near retirement or very near retirement right now.
So we're just going to look at a couple of cases here that are sort of examples of plans we've worked on with prior clients. This is Marco and Caroline, fictitious couple, but actual real clients in terms of like who the base case is about. So this is a couple that Marco was an employee at Chevron, longtime employee. Project Alpha had come around and they was looking at being left standing. And so there were some major challenges that we want to take a look at. So one of the things we're really understanding is LTIP compensation, as well as the net unrealized appreciation strategy with his ESOP shares, getting our arms around his overall financial picture for retirement, and then also helping him understand the differences between the lump sum or the annuity payment. So what we did was we created a comprehensive plan for him. We sat down and laid out the different timing and dollar amounts of the different stock options and net unrealized appreciation amounts. In the process, we did identify some cash flow surplus that was redirected to bolster his savings. One of the things that we were able to help him take advantage of was the after-tax to Roth mega backdoor Roth strategy, which was hugely beneficial. So this real individual retired a number of years ago. We've already used it once to help him for tax avoidance. Past that, we got into the very granular details on his taxes on a year-by-year basis, and we were able to show him to the penny what the benefit of net unrealized appreciation would mean for him, what some of the benefits to pushing back some of the LTIP compensation, particularly the non-qualified stock options, were going to mean for him as well. And we were able to show him in a real dollars and cents standpoint what this actually was going to mean. And so consequently, at the end of the process, we determined that he had a higher than 90% chance of success around retirement. We were able to identify a number of tax saving strategies that have literally saved him over 6 figures in taxes over the last few years. Of course, he and his wife felt a lot more confident about their ability to retire as they transitioned into it. He was really excited to be able to raise his hand and collect a severance check on the way out the door. And then now as we move forward, we're beginning to do, some tailored planning around things like gifting for the kids. And they're, looking at perhaps even buying a vacation home for the family that they're kind of excited about. So these are additional further subsequent conversations that we get to bring to the table. But really a lot of fun working with those two to create their plan.
Thanks, Brian. Another case, if you have a situation and you're not necessarily there, or maybe you're on the fence about taking a package and you get left standing, you kind of have your number met and maybe you think you're okay, but you don't really know. This particular case, they were looking to retire at 60 and 57 and then kind of reduce their tax burden. They needed to understand what their cash flow was going to look like if they took the package and that earned income goes away. And then ultimately they wanted to leave some sort of a cushion there. This is something that went through the 2020 EOI event. And so we had some challenges. You had a rising interest rate environment, just after COVID with inflation picking back up. And then how do you transition from, not really being ready to go? Now you're maybe going to take the package and maybe you're going to walk out the door and then be retired and you're living on that income. And so what we did was we took a look at segment rates. We decided to tell them, hey, pull the trigger. Interest rates are going up very quickly. 1% move in segment rates is about an 8% drop in that lump sum, which is pretty significant. We took a look at the timing of those severance documents and when they were left standing, when you executed those documents, and you can actually, depending on the time of the year that these things happen, you can spread your tax impact over a couple of years. And then we looked at things a little bit longer term to help them achieve those long-term objectives. And so what we actually do is we model these things, on a year-by-year scenario. What is that severance going to look like from an income standpoint? If they worked past April 2nd and they get that prorated SIP the following year, how's that going to impact taxes? And in this particular case, they're actually worried about what happens later on down the road. They did a really good job of saving inside the retirement plans, plus with what Chevron matched in the pension and what they matched in the 401k. And so they knew they needed to convert assets to a Roth IRA. And so if you just took a look with some basic assumptions, they were going to have a required IRS minimum distribution of $196,000 out at age 79, whether they needed it or not. In their particular case, this was a lot more than they needed for their particular lifestyle. So we built in some assumptions around annual Roth conversions that wouldn't pick them up in punitive tax bracket, and we were able to reduce that annual requirement distribution, by $20,000 per year. And so what that did was actually, reduce their IRA dollar amount out at age 79 from, 4 million down to about 3.5 million, and increase that Roth IRA balance from 550 to about 990. And so that ends up lowering that required minimum distribution for the rest of your life after age 72 or 73 or 75. And then also this achieved another objective for them, which is they wanted to pass assets to the next generation as tax efficiently as possible. Well, when you receive assets and you're a non-spouse, you have to distribute those in a 10-year window now. However, with assets being in the Roth IRA, those are going to be tax-free distributions while you're alive, but also those that inherit Roth assets will get to distribute those tax-free as well. And so we were able to achieve some pretty interesting objectives. And when you took a look at just apples to apples comparison, this reduced their income tax burden by about $121,000 over their required minimum distribution phase, which is pretty substantial. The next thing we did was we took a look at Chevron stock. What do you do with it? There's a very unique benefit to Chevron ESOP shares, particularly inside the 401k. And this benefit gets unlocked after you retire. And this money actually does not go into an IRA if the calculation makes sense, because you only pay taxes on the value of these shares. Ordinary income wise, you pay taxes on the cost basis of these shares, which in this case is about $7,200. And so this individual could remove $62,000 worth of Chevron stock. They only pay taxes as if they took out $7,200. And so this particular case gave them a savings in taxes of about $18,000. So this is something that actually does not go into an IRA. It's a common mistake we see when someone says, just roll over your 401k and we'll manage it for you, or you can manage it yourself. This actually goes into a non-retirement bucket. When you retire from Chevron, most people have 3 buckets of money where assets need to transfer in the most tax efficient manner. So these are calculations that we provide for every single client before they ever pull the trigger to understand what the tax implications are going to be. So what we did was, preserve value by locking in that pension lump sum in the rising interest rate environment. We were able to save some taxes and reduce tax liability fairly substantially. We're able to identify they're going to have sustainable income and retirement throughout the rest of their life based on the lifestyle they have. And so they could absolutely raise their hand, take the package, walk out the door, do the things they wanted to do. They achieved, some beneficiary-driven objectives they have for later on in life, and they didn't really have a concern after that. Fast forward now 5 years, they're happy. They've really enjoyed retirement. They've never been busier. That's what we typically hear from people. So when we're taking a look at some key strategies for Chevron employees, there's a couple steps you want to think about. Brian, what do we typically look at?
Well, yeah. So the prior 2 examples were cases that we worked on just to kind of demonstrate some of the things that go into the planning process. Shifting gears a little bit, we want to talk about what are some things you might want to be thinking about right now if you think that you might be left standing, and if there might be a big change coming down the road here. So, of course, first off, you really want to just understand and maximize the benefits that you have through the company. So just understanding when those payouts might occur, And also, I think perhaps taking some steps right now to maximize them if you should actually be separating from the company later this year. So, for example, it might be advisable to significantly increase your pre-tax contributions to try to maximize those by mid-year. Same is true for after-tax contributions. Once you're no longer working, getting money into retirement accounts is much, much more challenging, to say the least. So understanding that. Past that, understanding when those income events like the stock options, the RSUs, the pensions are going to be paying out. The retirement restoration plan, again, that's a really important one to understand what the payment structure is on that. We find a lot of people went with the default, which is a payment that's roughly 1 year after they separate from service. A lot of people don't realize that might be a solid 6-figure, and I've seen even 7-figure payouts that they don't want to have. So you're going to want to think about whether or not it makes sense to restructure that. Secondly, with regards to the pension, again, to echo Chad's comments earlier, you don't need to submit that paperwork the minute you separate from service. You can sit on that paperwork. And as we sit here today, it's generally believed that interest rates may start to drift down the second half of this year. That would enhance the lump sum value. So maybe that's advantageous to do. Again, to the degree that's possible, optimize the severance packages and prior ROMs. We saw people, they were able to stretch out the payments and get that in a different calendar year. Not sure that's going to be possible this time around. We'll obviously have to see how that goes. And then lastly, just really understand what your cash flow and expense management needs are going to look like. A lot of times we're talking about people that have been with the company for 30 or 40 years. They've got a paycheck every 2 weeks, like clockwork. All of a sudden you're no longer getting a paycheck. So where does your money come from? So just simple things like that, understanding how that all, pieces together, really going to be critical. And those are conversations that we have with people and have had for folks for a very long time.
It's, kind of fascinating. When people leave Chevron, it's eye-opening for them to see how much healthcare coverage actually costs outside the company. And so whether or not you have 75 points or not, or more when you leave, there are some options out there. You can continue coverage under COBRA. Most likely for most people, you could look at the health insurance marketplace. Prices obviously will be a lot higher than you're paying through Chevron. And then we've also had cases where it actually made sense for someone to get on their spouse's insurance coverage. So it's something you have to weigh the benefits out there. What's the actual cost you're going to be paying? Make sure that you take care of that HSA. Make sure if it's invested, that you're paying attention to how that thing is allocated. If you're nearing age 65, if you're two years out even from age 65, really pay attention to, one, Medicare enrollment, but then also what's your taxable income look like? There's a 2-year look ahead with respect to IRMA, and you can really penalize yourself to the tune of several $1,000s per year in additional cost you have to pay just by going over a few dollars in a bracket. So long-term care considerations, if you have coverage through work, that is portable. If it's the right type of coverage, you want to evaluate, do you need it anymore? Do you want to continue it? And what are those costs actually going to be? There's some things that you can control with respect to stock options as well. Timing is everything with this. You can control, when that RRP is paid out to an extent. There are some distribution rules when you submit changes to that actually. And then with your non-qualified stock options, you can choose to determine a specific date you want to execute those things if there is a value to it. The things you can't control are when those RSUs are paid out and PSUs are paid out and realized. And so, if you've got some value in the LTIPs and it's November, December, and those expire next January, then maybe you wait until early part of January to execute those options because it's going to be in the new tax year. These are all things you have to consider with your overall financial plan. So if you have a lot of questions out there, we've tried to produce a lot of resources for individuals because we know this is a stressful time for a lot of folks. Some people are just kind of on the fence about whether or not they're ready to go. Some people have been waiting for the opportunity to go that we've talked to. And so we've created some resources as far as a checklist. Whether we are handling this for you, you're doing it yourself, use us as a resource. We genuinely have gotten to work with some really great people. And so we've tried to create these resources for everyone to use if you need to. There's a very basic checklist. There's a planning guide for things you want to consider. if you're left standing. And then make sure you let us know, an email address for that segment rate newsletter. We send that out every single month after the IRS publishes the official segment rates, which is what Chevron uses to determine the increase or decrease of that lump sum. That way you can become informed if you're going to make that decision on your own. You'll have something to follow, and you'll have something to track to kind of help you with that. So why work with Insight? We've been working with Chevron folks for 23 years now, actually. I work with over 500 companies between, Texas and California. It's all been about relationships. We typically start advising people solely based on planning discussions, not managing money for anyone individually at that time, but actual advice. And that's because we're fiduciaries. We do what's in the best interest of our clients. We don't have any proprietary products, proprietary insurance tools that we're forced to use or anything like that. We only charge a flat fee for our advice for managing assets, if that's the route you choose to go. Even if you're not working with us, use us as a resource. It's probably a question that has come up before. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, I mean, here at Insight, we are a holistic, comprehensive wealth management firm, and hopefully, as those couple of cases that we cited earlier demonstrate, there's a lot of moving parts on this. I mean, this is not to be taken lightly. There's a lot of decisions that need to be made, and there are some relatively complicated facets to the Chevron benefits that need to be well understood. Otherwise, you can literally cost yourself money in the form of additional taxation or lost opportunity. And you want to make sure that you have turned over every stone before you make some of these really, really large life-changing decisions. And again, to echo Chad's point, we've been doing that for a very long time. We know the company well, we know the benefits extremely well, and we're ready and capable of helping to guide people through that decision process. Now, we obviously have offices in San Ramon, California, near the headquarters, and down in Houston, near the soon-to-be new headquarters. And we're more than happy to sit down face-to-face with folks. But we also have clients that live all across the country, and we're more than happy to meet with folks via Zoom as well. Again, if nothing else, our initial appointment is usually pretty low-key experience where we're learning to learn a little bit about somebody and their situation and what they're looking to do. And then, of course, share what it is we do with our clients and, answer some really important questions folks may have about their Chevron benefits. And if that's as far as it goes, that's perfectly fine. Again, we really want to be a resource for folks here. We know that there's a lot of changes coming down the pipe here with the company, and we do want to extend ourselves and our knowledge to those individuals. So we look forward to the opportunity to talking with you. If you do have any questions, feel free to email us or call us directly. Happily get you on the calendar. And again, we want to thank you very much for giving us some time today. Chad, appreciate all your information. And we very much look forward to seeing you hopefully soon, okay?
Thanks, guys.